Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well, and it is that time once again to talk about the London Film Festival. This was my 5th year of attending the festival. However, what made this year different was that I attended the festival as a member of the press. That's the first time I've ever been a member of the press, not just for this festival, but anything in general. And I've got to say, it was a genuinely amazing experience. I was able to see more films than I ever have at the festival, and I was able to meet some amazing people along the way, and it was just an overall great experience. Now, unfortunately, due to life happening, I wasn't able to see some of the big films that I was really looking forward to, and I'm really annoyed that I did miss those. However, with that being said, I was able to see more films this year than I ever have at the festival. I think beforehand the most I had seen was about 5. This year I ended up seeing 11. So considering we got a lot to get through, I'm just going to get straight into it with the first film. So the first film that I saw at the festival was Inland, starring Mark Rylance and Sean Dingwall. And I'm going to be honest, this was not the best one to start the festival with, because it left a lot to be desired. It's not an awful film by any means, but I'm in no hurry to watch it again. One of the biggest issues with this film is, unfortunately, it doesn't really have a story of any kind. Now, usually I quite like a film that focuses more on moments or characters rather than the story, and that's more of a second-hand thing and isn't the main focus. Unfortunately, with Inland, though, there is no story full stop. There's a lot of setup of a story, but nothing comes to fruition. There's a lot of things that are shown that leaves a lot of stuff ambiguous, and nothing's explained, and nothing is really well thought out, if that makes any sense. You can tell that they were trying to be ambiguous to create a sense of mystery, but instead it just comes across as like they didn't know what they were doing, which is a shame, because there is a lot of potential in the main premise of this film, but unfortunately the way it's presented in the film comes across as not necessarily lazy, but half-arsed. Thankfully though, my second film, 1976, was a massive improvement in every way, and actually surprised the hell out of me, considering I didn't really know anything about this film full stop, other than the fact that it was a drama thriller hybrid. First of all, everything about this film from a presentation standpoint is perfect. The film looks and feels like it's set in the late 70s, and the score, which is probably my favourite aspect of the whole film, really adds to a lot of the moments in this film and really heightens them and makes them a lot more impactful than they probably wouldn't be if the score wasn't there. The film also has a fantastic central performance by Elaine Kuppenheim. I've probably butchered that, so I apologise, but she is absolutely fantastic, and she makes a lot of the moments in the film a lot more believable, and she is always the key element of the film that keeps you drawn into some moments that might be duller than others. She is the thing that holds the movie together, and she is genuinely fantastic in the film. There are also quite a few scenes that try to eke out some sort of suspense or tension out of these small moments as well, and I did really like the way the film approached those moments. I would just say my one criticism or nitpick with the film is that it could have gone further. As much as those scenes of tension are really well done, the film could have really benefited from maybe a couple more of those, or really making it more of a focus than it is in the film. After that, I then saw the film Palm Trees and Power Lines, which again was another one that surprised the hell out of me, especially considering I also didn't know much about this one either. And I think half the reason it surprised me so much was that it sets you up with a false sense of expectation within the first half of the film, because that first half feels and plays out like just your typical indie, laid-back, very quiet coming-of-age film. However, there is a certain point toward the back end of the film where it starts to show its true colours, and it actually becomes very hard to watch as the film evolves into what it's actually trying to get across. So this is a weird one, because I do highly recommend this film, but it's also a very hard one to recommend considering how the film plays out in the final half. Because the way the film delves into this exploitative relationship that is at the centre of the film, and the way that just evolves and keeps going on a downward spiral, is handled in such a naturalistic and real manner that it just kind of hits and makes your heart sink to the bottom of your stomach when you're watching it play out. Thankfully though, I managed to cleanse the palate with my next film, which was the only documentary I watched at the festival, and it was called Getting It Back, The Story of Cymande. This is the story of a very underrated but highly influential funk band from the UK in the 70s, and I really love this documentary. It's probably my favourite documentary I've seen so far this year, but that being said, I've not seen many documentaries this year. But it's just an incredibly fascinating watch, and as you're watching the film and you start to realise how influential this band were, and how many times their songs have been used in samples, etc., or how many times other bands have been influenced by their style, it then becomes so eye-opening, and it makes you wish you'd known about this band even more. After that, I then watched a film called Sick of Myself, which, again, I didn't know much about going into it. The only thing I had heard was that it was similar in approach to The Worst Person in the World. And after watching this film, I can say, yeah, it kind of is, but it's got a lot more of a fucked up sense of humour than Worst Person in the World does. Because this film goes places that you're not necessarily expecting, and to be honest, there's a couple of scenes in this film where I was laughing, but then afterwards was thinking to myself, oh bloody hell, I shouldn't have really laughed at that. This type of humour is hit and miss for me, but thankfully Sick of Myself manages to stick the landing pretty much throughout the entire film, because it takes that cynical, sick sense of humour that it has and just keeps kind of amplifying it the more the film goes on, in subtle ways and in exaggerated ways as well. And I think the end product is a funny time, but also one that, again, is quite painful to get through in the best possible way. After that, I then went to see my first in-person film of the festival, which was Florian Zeller's The Sun. This is his directorial follow-up to 2020's The Father, which is an absolutely fantastic bit of filmmaking. Unfortunately, The Sun is a bit of a downgrade. Actually, I say a bit, it's a major downgrade from The Father. The best aspect of the film, without a doubt, are the three adult performances: Hugh Jackman, Laura Dern and Vanessa Kirby. They are obviously trying their hardest, and especially with Hugh Jackman, there are a lot of scenes that, if handled slightly differently, would come across rather cringy, but I actually believed his performance in those scenes, and it made them work for what it was. Unfortunately though, the film as a whole is so on the nose and so tacky in execution of the theme and central messages it's trying to get across that unfortunately I just couldn't buy into what the film was trying to make me feel. And also, considering this is a film about depression and suicide and parents trying to understand the issues that a son is going through yet can't quite explain, there are some choices in this film that actually kind of made me laugh. And considering this is meant to be a very serious and grounded depiction of those things, I shouldn't be laughing at that, which is not good. After The Sun, I then saw Park Chan-wook's new film, Decision to Leave. I'm going to be honest, I've not seen many of Park Chan-wook's films before. I think the only one I have seen is Oldboy. So with that knowledge in mind, I went into Decision to Leave expecting a similar sort of style or tone, basically something quite dark. And what I ended up with was not as dark as I was expecting, but actually something that was just really engaging from start to finish and was a lot funnier than I was ever expecting it to be. This film somehow manages to blend a police procedural drama with a romance, and it somehow works. For a number of different reasons. The two lead performances are both fantastic, and I think if those performances weren't as strong as they are, I don't think that weird blend of genres would work as well as it does. But on top of that, you have Park Chan-wook behind the camera, injecting a lot of energy, style, and more importantly, humour into the film, which I think, again, really benefits the end product and makes it more engaging than, say, if any other director had handled this. After that, I then saw the hotly anticipated new film from Darren Aronofsky called The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser, Sadie Sink, Hong Chow, and a few other people as well. And this film is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It takes a while to get going, but once you're on board, Aronofsky really delivers a film that will just sit with you for a very long time. It's a very emotionally dense film that will take quite a while to process. I mean, I watched it back on Tuesday and I'm still trying to process the whole thing. But yeah, from a filmmaking perspective, from an acting perspective, just the thing in general is probably the best crafted film I saw at the whole festival. The camera work is absolutely brilliant. I love the way that Aronofsky utilises this one location throughout the entire film. On top of that, you have pretty much fantastic performances across the board. Brendan Fraser gives probably the best performance of his career. Like, I've never seen him go this hard before, but I want to see more of it. Sadie Sink is fantastic as his daughter. However, and I've seen a lot of people mentioning this, and I cannot agree with it more, I think the true MVP of this film is Hong Chow as Brendan Fraser's character's carer. She is phenomenal in the film, and she gives this one moment that just is, you can tell she's putting her all into it, and it just really breaks your heart during that scene. So yeah, camera work, presentation wise, this film is fantastic. Performances are all great. From just everything perspective, I don't have any gripes with this film. And then after The Whale, I had a very severe case of tonal whiplash, because the next film I saw was Billy Eichner's new LGBT comedy Bros. Now, initially this wasn't on my radar, but that's the benefit of doing film festivals. You end up seeing a film that you didn't have on your radar, but after you watched it, you're so glad you ended up seeing it. And Bros definitely is that film, because in terms of pure enjoyment, this is probably the most fun I've had with any film of the festival. I was laughing from the literal moment it started to the moment it finished. I don't think I've laughed this much at a film as well since probably Jackass Forever. This film works on so many levels. It's absolutely hilarious from start to finish, but at the same time has a genuine sense of heart that it always brings it back round to and never forgets about. So if you haven't had a laugh in a few minutes, it always manages to kind of tug at your heartstrings and bring the heart back to the main focus, and I thought it had a really good balance of those two things. On top of that, the film as a whole just kind of dissects what you're supposed to expect from a traditional rom-com, but then when it starts to do its own thing and play off of the tropes that it's dissected, it feels earned in doing those things, because it is doing it in its own way and in a more honest way than you would see in most other films like this. After that, I then saw the new film from Maria Schrader called She Said, starring Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan, and this follows the journalists at the New York Times back in 2016-2015 who eventually broke the story of Harvey Weinstein and all of the stuff he did throughout his years of being a producer, that then led to the rise of the Me Too movement. I'm a sucker for investigative dramas and thrillers like Spotlight or even David Fincher's Zodiac, and thankfully she said ticked all the right boxes for me. I was engrossed right from the word go, and there were even a few moments throughout the film that genuinely made me shed a tear, and I was not expecting that. The film as a whole, I thought, did a really, really good job of really conveying the pain that the women went through and how traumatizing they found it, but also the stress that the journalists had to go through as well, just to try and get this news out there and to try and tell the truth to the whole world. I thought both of those things were both very strongly well done in the film, and yeah, I just think this was a really well made film on every level. It's not a perfect film, but in terms of its impact and what it means, especially now anyway, I just thought it was a really good film, and it's kind of the film we need right now. And finally, the last film I saw at the London Film Festival was Martin McDonagh's newest film, The Banshees of Inisherin. This was probably my most anticipated film of the festival, because I've loved everything McDonagh has done to date, whether that's In Bruges, Seven Psychopaths, Three Billboards, even the short film Six Shooter, which I cannot recommend enough. I pretty much love everything he's ever done, so I went into this wanting to love it, and thankfully it ended up being my favourite film of the entire festival. What a coincidence. It's got that typical dry, quick wit and dark humour that you're expecting from a McDonagh film, but this time round there is a layer of sadness and empathy under the surface that pops its head up every now and then and is really well utilised. And he hasn't really delved into it this much probably since In Bruges, and it's a really nice change of pace, because as funny as this film can be, which it is most of the time, there is a sort of somber feel throughout the film that I haven't really seen in any of his previous films, and it really just added to the film as a whole, both in terms of the story, in terms of the character relationships. Just that somber feel that was underneath everything just really paid off in the end. Thankfully, all of the above is strengthened by pretty much fantastic performances across the board, especially from our main pairing, Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, but a lot of the supporting performances are also fantastic as well, especially the breakthrough performance from Kerry Condon, I think that's her name, who plays Colin Farrell's character's sister. She is phenomenal in this film, and Barry Keoghan, as usual, delivers a fantastic performance as well, which again has a lot of empathy and sadness behind it. So, that is everything I watched at the London Film Festival this year. If you're excited for some of these films, or if you attended the festival, let me know in the comments below. I would love to know what you think of some of these films if you've already seen them. Like the video if you haven't done so already, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.